good morning, and welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, awaken the consciousness. Good morning, Mr. Benny Mathers. How is life over there?
Doing well. Top of the morning to you.
Top of the morning to you. Hey, we're getting closer to St. Patty's Day.
I know, right?
I know. Yeah.
Didn't we just celebrate Valentine's Day? Although we've probably seen St. Patrick's Day in the stores, I think the day after Christmas too. I mean,
yeah. I think
ridiculous.
Christmas is in there again too.
Right. So the kind little leprechauns.
Yeah.
Do you believe in them?
Well, I'm half Irish.
So then that's a yes. That's a given. Just walked right into that one.
You got to watch out for those ones, right? You think they're going to bring you a little pot of gold, but
they're probably under the counter under here somewhere. Gotta look for them.
Well, I'm thinking about Elf on the Shelf. This leprechaun in the, I don't know.
Leprechaun in the, we'll come up with something.
We'll come up with something, yeah. Anyway.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I do too. So I got to ask you a question, Betty. January was like 8,000 years long. How do you feel about February?
8,000 years long. And then February was 8 hours long, so just shorten it up a little bit. It seemed to zip by pretty quickly. Of course, we dealt with a lot of storms in the Pacific Northwest here, so I think that took up a lot of time for us to clean up our yards and school and it's been. I don't know if it happens every year. Everything goes by so fast or quickly, but
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's different. We were talking about how the weather's been different, and maybe that's part of it. But anyway, as they say, time marches on. March is coming.
It does. And hopefully people are still sticking to their New Year's intentions as well. Because usually within the first month or the first week or whatever, I think the percentage is 50 or 60% just totally quit. And so good on you if you're still at it, people.
Yeah, good on you if you're still at it.
Yeah.
And and if not, spring is coming, you can start over there too.
Perfect. Yeah.
Astrological New Year.
Baby steps.
Anyway, baby steps, little baby steps. Anyway, I am the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area. Find out more about me at ReikiOasis.com. And I have an Egypt trip coming up. Yes, I do. I take sacred travelers, mystical travelers on sacred trips. And we are going to Egypt September 30 to October 14, and a 5-day extension to Petra, Jordan. And I'm going to just say, if you have not ever been to Egypt, or if you've been to Egypt before, I really highly encourage you to go. A lot of people are traveling there, and it seems to be the right time of year. But if you want information on that trip, just send an email to reikioasis@gmail.com and ask for it. I'll send you the itinerary, I'll send you the information, and we can set up a little, what I call a discovery call, so that we can talk face to face and you can ask all the questions. And these are small groups. It's an intimate, magical experience, and I hope that you'll consider joining us. As far as the astrology report goes, this week's a celestial trifecta, blending spiritual potency with cosmic spectacle. And earlier in the week, we had the Mahashivratri, which was actually, between Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. It's the great night of Shiva, a celebration of Lord Shiva's transformative dance of creation, preservation, and destruction, and his act of drinking the poison Hala to save the universe, earning the title of Nilakanta, the blue-throated one. It also honors his union with Parvati, symbolizing the harmony between masculine and feminine energies, falling under Mars-ruled Tuesday energy, that night marked by fasting, meditation, and staying awake. Good luck on that one. Is meant to ignite courage to shed our negativity and connect with consciousness. What a beautiful energy for my guest today. On Friday, which happens to be tomorrow, February 28th, we have a rare 7-planet alignment, a beautiful parade that will grace the evening sky. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune will arc across the heavens just after sunset, visible worldwide, weather permitting, as we say. This planetary parade along the ecliptic, our solar system's orbital plane, offers a wonderful thing. Now, the planets have been up there all month, and a lot of people have been going out. We had 6 planets, we have 7. And these planets, I look at it like everything kind of coming into alignment. You know, it's time to really take a look at things. Mercury is the planet of communication, Venus, the planet of love, Mars, the planet of energy or drive, Jupiter, the planet of expansion, Saturn, the planet of discipline or karma, Uranus, the planet of innovation and sudden changes, and Neptune is intuition, dreaminess, building up your abilities. So these planets, when they're coming together and they're all having a conversation with each other, I think are encouraging us to have a conversation within ourselves, bring all your parts together, and also take a look at the world around us. With so much division and so much, I don't know, a lot of activations going on out there, it's good to try to come into a quiet place within the center of yourself. And as I say, begin the work from there. And then the week is going to close with a new moon in Pisces on Saturday, March 1st at 10 degrees, conjunct Saturn and ruled by dreamy Neptune. This lunation dissolves boundaries, blending compassion with commitment, and it's perfect for setting soulful intentions with staying power. I also want to say this, a lot of my clients have been very emotional lately. So when that's happening, you know, we are entering into Pisces season. Just realize that that's okay. It's all right. Sometimes we need to process those things, look at those things, and sometimes we need to put our arms around each other and hold each other in love. And that's kind of the, I don't know, it's my message for today. And on the back of that beautiful energy, I'm bringing in my guest. Reema Datta is a celebrated yoga teacher, an author, and an advocate for the transformative power of ancient yogic wisdom. Her latest book, The Yogi's Way, Transform Your Mind, Health, and Reality, offers a 12-week self-guided journey to break free from destructive mental patterns and cultivate lasting peace. Born into a family of yogis, Reema learned yoga and Ayurveda from her mother, grandmothers, and grandfather, a prolific writer on Vedic philosophy. With a master's degree from the London School of Economics and a background working at the United Nations, she left to deepen her study of yoga, teaching workshops, retreats, and trainings across 5 continents since 2002. And Reema blends traditional yogic yogic tradition, modern science, and a mission to reconnect us with our true self. Welcome to the show, Reema. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. I want to show the people, this is her beautiful book, The Yogi's Way. And your book, honestly, feels like a love letter to the mind and spirit, right? There's a little love letter out there. I want you to give us your background. We have a lot to talk about here. What inspired you to write this book? I'll kind of start there and weave into that your journey, how you got to where you're at today. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I know I've been lucky in my life because I've had one foot in India and one foot in the US since forever, my whole life. So I feel like I've had this luxury of experiencing the best of 2 very different worlds. And it's, you know, of course, in the West, yoga is so centered on the body. And it's very different. Like in India, the teachings focus on the mind. And so I wrote this book partly to bridge that gap, because I find that the teachings on the mind are actually so relevant for our modern world. And I needed them myself. That's kind of how this book was born. I went through some, like a very difficult time in my life about 10 years ago. and I was experiencing like intense amounts of anger and attachment and fear and anxiety. And it was interesting to observe myself, because I was like, wow, I was born into yoga. I've been teaching yoga. By then I had been teaching yoga for over 10 years, quite successfully all over the world. But when I was going through a separation from the father of my daughter, and it really, like, my mind was a mess. And it wasn't just for one day, it was for weeks and months. And I could feel how all those emotions were just draining my energy. And it was just wild to observe myself and be like, even after all this experience, I'm still having such a hard time getting a hold of my mind. So I was like, something is missing in my practice. And so I ended up actually moving in with my parents, with my 3-year-old daughter, and just decided I'm going to give myself a little break, let them support me for a little bit. And so while she was around 4 years old, and as any parent knows, when your kid starts going to nursery school, it's like, wow, all of a sudden you have a few hours, to do something for yourself. And so when she would go to school and I was with my parents, I kind of put myself into a little retreat mode. And I just got really quiet and started reading the ancient texts. Since we come from this tradition, my family, their bookshelves are full of yogic wisdom texts. So I would just pick up the books and I started reading. And there were texts like the Vedas, Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. These are like the original texts of yogic wisdom, which I had actually had exposure to, since I was a child. But reading them with the eyes of a mother and a grown woman and someone who had just experienced a deep wounding, it's like the teachings just came alive to me in a different way. And I just noticed all of these lessons, and so many of them were about our emotions and our thoughts, and how to not judge ourselves for feeling anger or anxiety, but like recognizing that this is part of being human, and embracing those parts of ourselves and really letting them be and getting to the depths of them. And then that's when the healing starts to happen. And those teachings, like I would read about them and then I would practice for my own sake because I needed them. And they've worked. Like I was getting, like, my grip on all those emotions was loosening, and I was getting energized and uplifted, and it was amazing, and and during that time, it was really interesting because some of my very good friends who are very deep yoga practitioners and also teachers, they were also suffering in their minds, like going through losses of loved ones or divorces and just our financial difficulties. And so I was like, okay, I'm not the only one, And then you see the larger world and the statistics of anxiety and depression. So I thought I really need to get these teachings out to share them.
I so much appreciate what you're saying. And one of the reasons I was wanting you on the show is because I do know that there's a couple of things. A lot of people do the poses, I'll say, the physical aspects of it, and they're like, I'll run over and I'll do some hot yoga, and then I'll go over and I'll do this, and then I'll go do that, and they're rushing from thing to thing. But you're bringing something very real into the discussion, and I call it the living level of life. But yeah, we are, it's more than just the physical. And I can tell by what you're saying that as you read these ancient wisdoms, right? Ancient wisdoms, because it's wisdom. And then you're doing it from a different place within you, that you really started to heal. You got things out. It's kind of a big deal, It's like the difference between just doing something and truly embodying it, like it came to you, like it worked for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have I don't know if you can do this. Maybe give us an example, like what I call living level of life, practical example of something that you read and then what you did and then how it worked.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in the book I write about
Hmm.
kleshas. It's a Sanskrit word. It means the literal translation is a mind poison or a destructive emotion.
Yeah.
And so the wisdom texts recognize that our emotions, if we don't process them in a healthy way, they can become harmful. And just to be clear to the listeners, the texts also recognize that no emotion is good or bad in and of itself. Like, we're human, we're meant to experience all the full array of emotions, but there's a way to process our emotions and express our emotions in ways that are beneficial, and there's ways that are harmful. So we recognize both. And so one of the things I noticed, one of my biggest kleshas that I was experiencing at that time was attachment. And attachment can take many forms, but I was attached to this mental image that of what a family is supposed to look like mother, father, child under one roof. And I was so like attached to that image that, like, when my partner talked about separation, living in separate households, like, I couldn't, it was just like too, like, it was just like I would just get angry and hurt, and all the fear and the shame. And then as I was reading these texts, I realized, wow, this is my attachment. It's just this mental image, and so one of the teachings is to, loosen the grip on our attachments and on our ideas of how things are supposed to be. And to open, so with these practices, like, a big part of yoga is connecting with consciousness. And consciousness it's defined in different ways, but in the yoga terminology and Vedic yoga, consciousness is like the deepest part of ourselves, which is just infinite space. It's like this field of possibility, pure potentiality. And so our practice is to connect to that innermost part of our being that is pure potential and infinite space. And so I started to do that in my meditations. And what happens is, as you're recognizing, what are my kleshas, what are my attachments? And as you're loosening the grip on them, you're also connecting to the spaciousness. And so instead of the mind gripping to this, like, things have to be in this way, and it's like the mind is so narrow, the mind starts to open to possibility. And you start to recognize that nothing is good or bad, like staying together or being apart. It's not good or bad, but everything, like underlying everything, there's this field of possibility. And your mind starts to rest on that. And that's so healing and liberating. And that was a big part of my journey.
I love that. While you were talking, I was entering into that, like that breath and then that spaciousness. And I was thinking about how often people come to me and they're like, Loretta, I just don't have room for anything, right? Like, I'm so tight and and like you said, I'm so attached to it has to be this way. And just the very act of following what you just said, I went, oh, yes. What if there was infinite space, that connection to that consciousness? And then from that place, you're just different, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. So the kleshas, you said, kleshas, yeah. And I like what you said, that our thoughts, these things can become poisonous. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In my work with Reiki, some of the energy work that I do, we talk about, the emotions getting lodged in the organs or the tissues,
Yes.
and needing to bring that out. So your practices in here can help people do that.
Yeah. And it's
Yes.
beautiful because on the path, you're not rejecting the emotion, you're not getting overly entangled in it, letting it drain your energy. You're really facing it and seeing what's underlying it, and getting to the depths of it, which is how the healing begins.
So what is your definition of yoga? What is yoga?
I see it differently. It's interesting to me that that yoga is defined as union of mind, body, and spirit. Like that's the kind of the going definition. But after having this time to really immerse myself into the wisdom texts, I find that that's a misinterpretation. Through yoga, we can align mind, body, spirit 100%. And that's part of the purpose. And it's very powerful. But I wouldn't say it's union of mind, body, spirit. I would say it's union with our soul. And what is the soul? The soul is actually consciousness. Like that's our innermost being, that infinite space. So yoga is really union with the soul. And in our yoga practices, we loosen the knots in the body and we loosen the blocks in the mind so that we can unite with our soul, so that we can unite with our consciousness. And actually in the wisdom text, they say very clearly, it's a huge teaching that we're not our bodies. We're not these bodies that are constantly changing. And we're not our mind. We're not the thoughts and emotions that are constantly shifting and moving. Like we're something so, our true self is something so much more profound. So they say I'm not my mind, I'm not my body. I am that consciousness. I am that infinite field of possibility. I am that pure potentiality. And that's what we're uniting with through yoga.
Yeah, I love that. The infinite space. I am that. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, making that connection. Yeah. I know that the Yoga Sutras play a big role in your work. And what are they? And what are they? Tell us about that.
The Yoga Sutra is like this string of wisdom. And it's interesting, even that text, I think there's only 3 sutras, 3 lines that are about the physical body, and the rest, it's all about the mind. And the sutras, they lay out very clearly how kleshas can block us from spiritual growth and how they can create blocks in the body. In Sanskrit, we call them granthis. And they say like the Sanskrit language, the vibration of the sound carries the meaning of the word. And I feel that like granthi. It's just, we don't want that. Like granthi means knots. And actually the literal translation of granthi is a very difficult knot to untie. So these kleshas, if they're not addressed, if we just ignore them or let them drain us, then they can turn into granthis in our body. And that can turn into imbalance, and that can even turn into disease, which now, even in Western science, where that's being proven that our emotions can lead to imbalance and disease. So that's part of what's written in the Yoga Sutras. And they identify the major kleshas as anger, attachment, fear, mostly fear of death, pride or feelings of separation between self and other, and also delusion, like mistaking illusion for reality.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
That one. I feel like I talk to people about that all the time. I would like, is that is that real? Is that anchored in reality, or is that just fantastical thinking? Right? Like if it could just be this, or it could be that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about mitras. What are mitras? Why are they essential?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite words, mitras. They're friends. The literal translation is friend. But it's a very special type of friend, like a friend that protects you from harm. And not just the harms of the world, but the ways that we harm ourselves, through our own words and thoughts and actions and choices. So mitras are people, and it's okay to even just have one mitra on the journey, or 2, that's huge. But they're people that you do your practices with, and you go on a spiritual journey together. So every day, every week, you're engaging in the same practices. And then, for anyone who is practice yoga or any spiritual practice, so much surfaces when we do these practices, and we need outlets to process, what's going on. Like, I did this practice and I don't understand what's happening. So you have your mitras to talk to about what you're experiencing, to hear their experiences, to ask questions, to debate philosophies, and to make the journey rich like that and fun. Like, you share laughter and good food and tears, and it's so important. And ultimately your mitra becomes your accountability partner. So you keep each other on track, and it doesn't have to be something super strict. Like, if your mitra needs a day break, or needs to just take it easy for a while, like, that's okay. But your mitra will help you come back to your practices, and they give you that motivation and that juice. And so it ends up being really a huge part of the path. And now, like, I shared some research in my book that people who have set goals, if you don't have an accountability partner, well, if you have an accountability partner, you're 65% more likely to reach your goal. And if you have regular check-ins with your accountability partner, that skyrockets to 95%. If you don't have an accountability partner, it's a 10% success rate. So it's huge, and so often our friends can see things in us that we can't see. So it just becomes such a rich relationship, and the journey just becomes so much, there's just ends up being so much more depth to the journey when it's shared.
Reema, I love that. In your book, for people listening, The Yogi's Way, you should just go get it and make a, just take a look at it. But you do start out with coming up with your mitra. And I was thinking, when I was reading this, and you take people through an exercise where it's like, like, if you think you don't have somebody, dig a little deeper. You probably do have somebody out there. And how often people come to me and they go, I'm so lonely, Loretta, I'm so lonely. And, through the last few years, I've gotten lonely, or I'm becoming isolated, and it's very detrimental to be like that. And to find this friend, this mitra, you say it better than I do, but this friend that will do it with you. And I was thinking, when I was reading that my goodness, what a brilliant thing to begin with. I want to do this 12-week thing. Would you do this 12-week thing with me? And journey, and the depth of that, to me, like the depth of that, because these are very in-depthful, insightful things that you're going to go through. And years ago, I lived in Saudi Arabia, and I wanted to try to get in shape, right? I'm kind of a physical girl at some level. And I talked a friend into doing it with me, and we had little kids. And so the only time that we could go walking was at 5 a.m., right?
Yeah.
5 a.m. So we made a commitment that we would meet outside. She lived 2 houses down. We'd meet outside, by 5:15, or we would enter each other's houses and get the person out of bed.
Nice. Great. Sometimes we need that.
Which we did. And it's kind of funny when I think about it, right? Like, I'd go in and she'd be in bed with her husband. I'd be like, hey, and she'd do it with me. And what's funny about it is that we did this, it was several weeks. And at some point she decided she didn't want to do it anymore, but I had already gotten in the habit. And so I just got up and did it. But I'm just telling you, she was definitely my mitra.
Oh, that's so
definitely
special
was.
to have
Yeah.
that. Wonderful.
So I'm not suggesting you all enter each other's houses, but maybe it could be part of it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little station break. And this is Loretta Brown, my wonderful guest today, Reema Datta, The Yogi's Way. And I know you can feel her energy and her gentle soul and her beautiful message of wisdom to us today. And don't go away. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Time is funny. Sometimes it seems fast and other times slow. When it comes to time slots remaining on Alternative Talk 1150, time is running out. In fact, there are just a few primetime slots available. So if you want to host your own radio program, the time to call 425-653-1150 is right now. Nope, no time for excuses. Dial 425-653-1150 to find out how affordable it can be to host a radio show. Alternative Talk, we have an opportunity waiting just for you.
Energy is powerful. It's all around us, mysterious, full of potential. Directing positive, healing energy to raise your vibrational rate through Reiki can change your life. Reiki master Loretta Brown has relieved stress, sadness, anger, and even helped clients lose weight, stop smoking, and end sleep disorders. Worldwide, people have sought out Reiki Oasis. If you want help with your dis-ease, visit ReikiOasis.com. Harness life's energy. Visit ReikiOasis.com today.
We see the urgent threat of climate change every day. Tornadoes in Texas, droughts in Europe, typhoons in the Philippines. But what don't we see? How the climate crisis hits vulnerable people the hardest, women and girls. That's why CARE helps the world's most marginalized people build resiliency and fight for a more just and sustainable world. You can help. Learn more at care.org/climate.
Don't let that herd mentality lead you off a cliff. We support thinking for yourself on Alternative Talk 1150.
You know, we are forever changed, and there's something I can't quantify it. You know, I know, yeah. I know you know what I'm talking about. Okay.
All right, stand by.
Thank you. Always the best music. Welcome back.
Well, hang on, Loretta.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. You should ask our guest who that was.
Who is that?
It's her.
She sounds familiar.
Did you?
It's Reema herself.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So where do we get that music, Reema?
Oh, so that's available wherever music is sold, on major platforms. That album, it's called Truth, Love, Creation. And I have another one called Here's My Heart. So those 2 mantra albums are out on Apple and Spotify and all the platforms.
What is your website, by the way, if people want to find you?
Sure. It's reemayoga.com. So REEMA yoga.com.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for finding that, Mr. Benny Mathers. That was great.
Sure.
Absolutely stunning. Yeah, I really like it. I like your gentleness of soul. It comes through very clearly, and you are definitely the right person to be carrying your message into the world. That is for sure. Yeah, it comes from reality, like you're a real person. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to remind people that, excuse me, these shows are archived at the KKNW 1150 AM archives for the original Loretta Brown show. We're also on YouTube and Spotify and Podcast One and iTunes and X, Megaphone. We're all over the place. You get the idea. So go back and download the show and listen to it. I want to ask you, before the break, you were talking about the Yoga Sutras and you were talking about our emotions and all this kind of stuff. And I have a question here. You write that yogis knew thousands of years ago what science is proving today about the mind's power. What's one ancient teaching that still amazes you?
In the Bhagavad Gita, they say that the mind can be our greatest friend or it can be our biggest enemy. And I feel like that is so timeless, because the mind can really be it can be a prison that just drains our energy, that limits us, that makes us exhausted and sick and stuck. Or the mind can be this platform for us to discover our gifts and create new things and experience purpose and peace and vitality. So it's just amazing that the power of the mind. You know, I opened my book with a quote from one of the greatest yogis in India, Sri Ramana Maharishi. And he says, "The mind is a wondrous power. Our destiny in life is determined by what we do with that power." You know, because that power can destroy us or it can uplift us.
Yes, it can. Do you have I'm going to say a practice or something for the listening audience, if anyone's listening right now, something that would be, I call them things that we can just take with us, something they could do right now, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could take a moment and just get a feeling for that dimension of consciousness. Would you like to do that?
That'd be great.
Okay. I mean, if you're listening to this and driving, then don't
do this and driving. Don't close your eyes while you're driving,
yeah,
please.
But if you're in a place where you can, you know, you can just get comfortable in your seat, whether you're on the floor or in a chair, and just let your eyes close. And we'll take a few big, deep breaths. So you can take your hands to your belly and just take a couple of big belly breaths. So as you inhale, let the belly expand out. And as you exhale, just feel the belly naturally move in. And you can take one hand at the chest and leave one hand at the belly. And the chest will move, the upper chest, but try to make it minimal. So most of the movement is in the belly. And again, as you inhale, fill the belly, let it expand out. And as you exhale, let the belly naturally move in. Just take another breath like that. And try to maintain that belly breath. You can relax your hands to your thighs if you like. And we'll keep our eyes closed for a moment. But with your eyes closed, take your gaze to the very middle of your eyebrows. And from that point, take the gaze up about an inch and inwards about an inch. And rest your gaze there. So that's called the third eye or the pineal gland. And just keep breathing smoothly. Relax your hips, relax your shoulders, relax the jaw. Even relax the eyelids, but let the eyes gaze up to that point of the third eye. And the pineal gland, you know, that's where we create melatonin. So as we take the gaze up there and concentrate, it sends the body a signal to relax. So eyelids are relaxed, but the gaze is up. And from that point of the third eye, gaze at the space behind your forehead. And just notice that it's boundless. It doesn't really have a beginning or an end. It's kind of infinite, you know, this vast space. So see if you can rest your gaze there as you keep your belly breath going. So this is what the yogis call consciousness, you know, this infinite vast space. And some things about consciousness we can appreciate together. So in the space, in the moment, you know, a really pleasant thought or emotion can arise, or a really painful thought or emotion or sensation can arise. But the space itself is unchanging. It's unaffected, undisturbed. So in yoga, we take the seat of consciousness and we allow the moment to be as it is. I feel anger, or I feel love, or I feel anxiety, or I feel hope, whatever it is, the space, it's like an open, welcoming presence. So we can allow it. So consciousness is quiet in the sense that it doesn't label the moment as good or bad or right or wrong or better or worse. It's silent. Consciousness is spacious in the sense that there's room for all of it. There's space for all of it. We don't have to push away discomfort. We don't have to grasp to pleasure. There's space for all of it to come, to be, to go. So again, we give ourselves the freedom to have our experiences. And consciousness is still in the sense that it doesn't change. The space is always here. And the powerful thing about consciousness, which meditators and mystics throughout the world have experienced, that when you really meditate every day and you get more and more familiar with the space, this dimension of consciousness, you'll start to see that it's actually not just this empty, neutral space. This space is actually love. And in yoga, we learn to anchor ourselves in this dimension. So whatever's happening in our inner world or in our outer world, we're anchored in this open, welcoming, spacious, loving presence. And we just become more effective in our lives. So just know it's a practice to tap into it. It's a practice to get familiar with it. And it's a practice to ultimately anchor ourselves in it. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes. That's something just to know that that is the underlying reality that we're trying to yoke with through our yoga practices.
Oh, thank you. That was so lovely. Thank you. I yes, kind of feel like that's just, I'm done now, Reema. It's hard to talk, right? That is so beautiful. I do hope people will, go back and listen to this and go through it and really get Reema's book, The Yogi's Way. I'm just going to say this, consider what might happen if you were to actually do this in your life and take the few minutes that it takes to center yourself in that space, in that consciousness. And, Reema, you probably feel this way, maybe even more than I do. I don't understand how people live life without the connection to this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, because then without that, of course, we're going to be anxious because life is hard. Life is up and down. Excuse me. And I think, I really appreciate one of the teachings in the wisdom texts that they recognize that life will always be up and down. It's not that we do these practices and then life is just perfect. Like life will always be up and down. We'll always have challenges we're dealing with, but we can learn to anchor ourselves and the space and cultivate an inner peace that we can bring to the world and that can help us navigate the ups and downs.
I love how life weaves itself together. Yesterday morning, I watched some sort of little, shorty YouTube thing, something that popped onto my feed, and it had a person who had two steel balls, and they were going to roll them down this ramp. And one side was a straight shot, and the other one was up and down.
Okay.
And they let the steel balls go, and the one that went up and down got there faster.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was very fascinating. It would be a great visual to put out there, but that's exactly what you just said. And I also want to say this because I think that we are sometimes under I don't know if it's an illusion, I'll use that word, this idea that life is supposed to always be good, and I should always have a smile on my face. And if I, rub the genie in the lamp and I don't get what I want, then what's wrong, right? Why does God hate me? Or these things that people say.
Right.
And yeah, and that's not it. Yeah. Yeah.
Like this book wouldn't exist if I didn't go through like the most painful moments in my life, like that pain. It's like Rumi said that the wound is the place where the light enters you.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And at the moment, it's so hard to see, because when you're just in the depths of the pain, it is just so crushing. Life can be so crushing. But to be able to at least hold that perspective that, okay, I can heal, and this can lead to, something that's expansive and beautiful.
Well, and I'm being with also how beautiful what you're offering us today, because we are in a time of great change, and I do talk to people about it all the time. And when there is chaos, this is where the goddess is working. I'm just going to say it like that. And out of this chaos is coming something new. And I started by talking about Mahashivratri, this idea of destruction and creation and all of that kind of thing. There's a lot in that, I know, but you bring a feminine perspective to everything that you're doing. And I don't know if you can comment on that, weave it in somehow with something to say, but yeah.
Yeah, in my own journey, I kind of longed for a woman teacher, and most of a lot of my teachers have been men, and I love them.
Yes.
They've been fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
I'm grateful and blessed to have had them in my life. And I mean, I had my mom, and my grandmothers were also my teachers. So I've been lucky, with them, with having just a lot of wonderful teachers. But there have been moments, especially after leaving my family home and being in the yoga world, beyond my family, I did, like, even with colleagues, I just wished that there were more feminine voices out there. And I noticed that most yoga teachers are women, but the yoga that we teach is based on male perspectives, like Ashtanga, Kundalini, Anusara. They were all developed by men. And they do all focus more on the physical, and I didn't see much attention being given to the mental and emotional sides of yoga and how powerful those teachings can be for all of us. So I felt like I have to be the one to shine light on these teachings.
Yeah, I actually love it. I have the beautiful pleasure of doing Vedic chanting for 25 years now, maybe, with a woman, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I still can't pronounce anything correctly, but I'm working on it, right? That's how I feel.
It's tricky.
Yeah. But I know that you also do mantra. And can you talk about the importance of mantra?
Yeah, mantras, they're powerful on so many levels. A lot of mantras are affirmations. So if we're feeling down on ourselves, or like, I can't do this, or I'm, not good enough, or, we get into these mental traps, the meanings are so uplifting and empowering that, I can. In the book, I teach a mantra. It takes 15 seconds. And my mom taught it to me. I've taught it to my daughter. And you wake up in the morning, you look at your hands, and you look to the tips of your fingers. And in English, the translation would be, abundance lies in the tips of my fingers. And then you look to the palms, the center of your hands, and you say, creativity and wisdom lie in the center of my hands. Then you look at the base of your hands, and perseverance and health lie at the base of my hands. And I recognize all of these qualities that live inside of me, that are in my own hands. And on this day, I'm going to rely on my inner resources. to shape my day. And we say that every morning. I can share it in Sanskrit since it's so short. It's Karagre Vaste Lakshmi, Karmadhye Saraswati, Karmule Tu Govinda, Prabhate Karadarshanam. And then you just start your day with feeling some empowerment and personal power and agency that I have all of this inside of me, and I'm going to draw upon my inner resources and shape this day, because so often we're seeing the outside world. Is the world going to give me this today? Is the world going to give me that today? And then we get upset when it doesn't, you know. But this is like we're creating our world from the inside out, and we know how everything is within us, and we have to just use it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. And my apologies, I had some technology problems.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. I didn't know if you went into the meditation. But so mantras, they're affirmations, they can be powerful. And then on another level, the vibrations of the sounds can help loosen the knots. Just like a yoga posture can help loosen those granthis that we were talking about earlier. The vibration of those sounds of the mantras have that same power. So we can really open ourselves up.
Yes, I love that. So I absolutely love that morning thing with the hands. I'm absolutely going to do that.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, it brings us to ourself in some manner that shifts everything. I think we often forget who we are, and the world around us often is just, you know, we're like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah.
And these aspects of being able to go more internal and combining the physical with the spiritual, honestly, the deep connections. Yeah.
Mm.
I know that you have taught all around the world. I don't know how many countries you've gone to. You're a prolific woman over there. What is the most profound lesson you've learned about the human spirit?
Mm-hmm. Definitely our resilience, you know, and that, I mean, I've seen in so many ways just how difficult life can be. But on the other side, it's like, I've also seen how powerful we are, you know. And in the very last chapter of the book, I share the story of my grandmother. And she had a spiritual practice, a yoga practice, and she had cultivated that inner peace, and it was actually unshakable. It was just like amazing to witness. And the reason I wrote about her is because her life was actually so hard. You know, it wasn't like, oh, her life was peaceful, so she was peaceful. It was just like one very difficult thing after another. Like married at 14, first child at 16, raising her daughters alone in a very patriarchal society. I mean, tough. When I say tough things, I'm not, no joke, you know. But my mom and her sisters are always saying how much joy she brought to their day-to-day life. And she cooked every meal for them from scratch. She made their dresses, you know, she sewed all their clothing, and she just had joy in the household. And when she was older, she had some health issues, but she always had that inner peace. And it's like, but that's all of our spirits are resilient, and we can all, like, whatever we're going through in our lives, that peace is a possibility, and no one can take away our birthright for joy, you know. So it's been amazing to witness that.
Yeah. And that sounds like the message that you really want people to get from your book, and the changes you'd love for them to find in their lives, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Reema Datta, it has been a blessing to have you here. It's been lovely. The Yogi's Way. And once again, where can people find you? And
so reemayoga.com. And, you know, if you get this book, you'll see it's a 12-week journey. So each chapter we spend 1 week on each chapter, and there's practices to do in each chapter. And I encourage everyone, like we spoke about, to get a mitra, to get a friend and experience it together. And if you'd like to experience it live, like I do 12-week courses, and some of them are online, so you can join our community. And if you absolutely can't find a mitra, we'll pair you up with a mitra through our community. And we spend 1 week with each chapter, and we go through the practices together and discuss them and experience them. So that I'm starting the first online one on March 16th. So if anyone would like to join, you can see all the information on Reema Yoga, and we can go through the journey together. There is a teaching I'll just share to wrap up with. There is this Tibetan yogi, and Gyumad Khyentse Rinpoche, and he gave a teaching once, and he held up a pencil, and he said, "This is the power of engaging in spiritual practice by yourself." And he broke the pencil in half. And then he picked up a wad of pencils, and he said, "This is the power of practicing in community." And he tried with all his strength, but he could not break those pencils. And just that, when we practice together with mitras, with community, the power of our practice, it just expands. It's so amazing. So I wish that for everyone listening.
Thank you. So Reema Datta, thank you so much for being on the show. Betty Mathers, you're the best. Everybody have a wonderful week. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you.